What's up, y'all? Tonight's episode will be unofficially brought to you by Holzlager Brewery in Woodstock, Illinois. And I want to give a quick shout out to my boy Travis and this wonderful beer, Hawaiian Hammer IPA. This shit is the bomb. Without further ado, let's get into the BRs. Yeah, that's right. Welcome back into the Electric Lounge.
Hi there.
I want to welcome everybody to the lounge.
Let me put it to you this way.
You know where you are.
The Electric Lounge.
Welcome to the Electric Lounge.
Hit it.
That is a mighty fine brew, but we're here to talk about records, so let's do that. So yeah, the BRs, and we start with this guy, Mr. Charles Bradley. No time for dreaming, this guy is the real deal. So apparently, Charles Bradley was a homeless guy that was also a singer and trying to get off the ground, an addict, a street guy, and somebody found him, gave him a chance, and 4 albums later, he's got a bunch of great stuff. So, No Time for Dreamin', Black Velvet, Victim of Love, and Changes. On this one in particular, there is an amazing version of the Black Sabbath song Changes, a song that I never really cared for that much, especially the version with Kelly Osbourne, but his version brings new life to it. It's slower, he does it in a soulful type way. This guy was really, really great. He died a couple years ago. I was fortunate enough to see him once in Sao Paulo, and he was like somewhere between like a James Brown type, soul singer type guy, flashy clothes, really great voice, and some music that would just bring tears to your eyes and a tap to your toe. He didn't really get huge by any means, but those who knew him loved him, and I highly suggest you are one of those people that are going to check him out because you're going to dig him too. After that, a Chicago band named Braid. This would be Movie Music Volume 1 and 2. Braid put out a good 6 or 7 albums. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. Broke up somewhere in the late 90s, and then they got back together fairly recently, a couple years back, and put out a new album. New album's pretty good. It's not really where they were in the old days. These two are compilation albums, some hits, singles and stuff, some B-sides, and also some really great cover songs. If there's one band that I truly dislike, it's the Smiths. I have no problem with the band, but I despise Morrissey. They do a couple Smiths songs on this one, and their versions of it make me actually like the song. I'll put a link to them below. But these guys kind of fit in the category of, I guess they were kind of, alternative for the sound, but they also fit in the category at the time of emo. Now, I don't consider myself an emo fan, but if this is what emo is, then I can kind of dig it. But overall, they're a tight 4-piece, and they've got some pretty great songs that, kind of make you want to kill yourself. So wait, shit, maybe it is emo. So what could be better to cheer yourself up after feeling kind of down and emotional about that recent breakup and everything else? Why not do a little bit of cross-dressing? Look, I ain't taking away from nobody that really digs that kind of thing. Not typically my style, but I definitely appreciate the right to do it. And these guys apparently took that one step further. Band called Brainstorm. These guys are a German prog rock band, although I would consider them more of a Canterbury sound. Now, if you don't know what the Canterbury sound is, I'm talking about stuff like Caravan, I'm talking about Soft Machine, maybe even a little bit of the early Gong scene because David Allen came out of that Canterbury scene. It's basically prog rock, but a little more fusion added into it, a little more instrumentation. There's a lot of flute and sax type stuff in this particular album. And then they've got their second one, Second Smile. Another great album, but not quite as good as their first one. These were released in the early 70s, 72 and 73 to be precise, and I really enjoy these albums. This first one I actually bought on a whim. I knew I'd heard about them due to some digging on stuff that I had done in prog sites and whatnot. So I actually decided to drop the 70 euros that I spent on it while I had a layover in Hamburg for an entire day, which I gotta say, that town has got some really cool record stores. Naturally, spent a lot of money there. This is one of the ones I spent the most on, and it was worth it. Another quick fun fact about Brainstorm, one of their members, Roland Schaefer, I want to say, I don't know if that last name is correct. What does it say here? He actually went on to become a member of Guru Guru, which is a psychedelic space rock, krautrock type band, also from Germany. They're pretty weird, but we'll get to them later on down the road. From Brainstorm to Brain Fart, why do I still have this? Laura Branigan. You remember Laura Branigan from such songs as Gloria. Well, I can honestly tell you that while that song is okay, and Livin' a Lie and Solitaire, which I think is actually on her second album, I have 2 of her albums. Why do I have 2 of her albums? Now, this one is, I can probably never hear it again. This one, Okay, not too bad, but not something I'm gonna need to hear again for another 25 years. So we'll put this away. Brand X, mostly instrumental prog rock style, featuring the likes of Mr. Philip Collins on drums. Not on all the albums, but he's on a couple. I think he's on this one and this one, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. Cool band. Mostly instrumental, like I said. There are some vocals. Phil actually sings a little bit, and another one of the guys in the band sings a little bit here and there. They kind of sound a little bit like Genesis style, but a little more jazzy, a little more free-flowing type stuff. Definitely gave Phil the opportunity to kind of set himself free and stretch out a bit in his off time with Genesis, which was somewhere around the mid-70s, and they're pretty good albums. Definitely worth a listen. The BRs are all over the place, man. And next up, we have the amazing, and I say that with quotation marks in the air, Bread. Now, these guys are some AM gold greatness, and I know you know some of these tunes. Make it with you, everything I own, baby I'ma want you, it don't matter to me. These are songs that if you're my age, then you definitely grew up with these playing in the car at some point in time. Maybe nowadays you might hear them in a grocery store because that's about what they've been reduced to. I will say this though, there's actually some heavier rockin' tunes on this actual album, and in fact some of their hits had a little more rockin' to them. I don't want to say that they're completely cheesy, but cheese and bread go together pretty well, so I'll just leave that on the table and go munch on something else. Tell me that's not an amazing name for an album. Heavy Metal Bebop. That's about sums it up. The Brecker Brothers, an album from 1978, and there's a reason that I want to say this was connected to Frank Zappa. Oh, right. Terry Bozzio is on drums. It's got some heavy progressive stuff, some definite jazz elements, and some funkiness just to spread on top. Instrumental greatness in a 70s sense. So put on your cool little hat and kick back with some heavy metal bebop. A psychedelic band that one of my friends in Brazil was trying to convince me was one of the best psychedelic bands that he'd ever heard of. Whereas I cannot agree that they're one of the top 5 for me, I would say that they're pretty cool for modern type psychedelic stuff. The Jonestown Massacre. Not to mention, they have a fantastic name. This one's kind of all over the place, a little bit mellower than I wish it was at times, but most of it has got nice melodies to it, some male and female vocals, and a little bit of surprise here and there. So something to check out when you got nothing better to do. Throw it on and see how it feels. David Broomberg Band, Midnight on the Water. One of those albums that I don't have any idea how I got this, where I got this, why I got this, but it's not too bad. Kind of a country feel, a little bit of bluegrassy type stuff. Nice version of Dark Hollow on here that was made famous by the Grateful Dead on their Reckoning album. It's pretty good stuff, man. It's definitely got some down-home feel, and again, I don't know how I got it, but if you're feeling like a hoedown, this is gonna be your thing. The Brothers Johnson. You say funk, I say blam. And it is quite funky indeed. It ain't just funky, but it's funky in a way that, well, that about sums it up, right? Look at that band. They are ready to get sweaty and get down. So throw on your bell bottoms, open that collar, and let's boogie, baby. One of the original shock rock gods, Arthur Brown and his Crazy World. Dude's a little bit wacky. You may know him from the song Fire, which was sampled by multiple people over the years. Psychedelic, twisted type pop for the late 60s when this came out in 68. This dude would come out on stage with a crown with a circle on it and flames. Look at that. And this guy was one of the first people to actually do stuff that people were just like, what are you doing? This guy is crazy. Hence, the Crazy World of Arthur Brown. Highly recommend this album, way ahead of its time, and it's got a little piece of everything for everyone, and you can see where so many people were influenced by this, including the great Alice Cooper. Moving on, not many people were influenced by this guy, but one did get some influence from him, and it ended up killing her. Inquisitive, right? Bobby Brown, that is. Don't be cruel. One of the guys that spawned out of the Cool It Now Kids, yes, new edition, he went solo, the others went to Belle Biv DeVoe, and yeah, it was his prerogative. This album's okay. It's you know, it's pop, it's 80s, it oozes 80s, but it was fun in a nostalgic sense. Not something I probably need to hear again. And Bobby, why did you give her the crack pipe, man? Speaking of crack, or at least drugs, probably cocaine in that sense, The godfather of soul, Mr. James Brown. When I'm talking about albums that are in poor condition, wherever I got this, it was obviously run over by a power sander because it sounds terrible. Album itself is pretty good. I mean, it is James Brown, the hardest working man in show business, but I'm gonna need to upgrade this one, or at least get some that sound a little better. I've got a couple more though, such as Jam 1980s, which is apparently the James Brown mustache years. Not a great look for him, but he is sweating just like the James Brown we all know and love. Probably about to put that cape on. Then I got one more that I bought not that long ago, and it's Live at Home. This is like studio outtakes. It was supposed to be them practicing and stuff, so some has James on it, some does not. It's just the JBs. Decent album. The recording quality is great. It was apparently recorded at his house after a show and they were practicing for more shows. But it is a fly-on-the-wall type thing, so you don't get the full album experience. It's more of just hearing a bunch of outtakes, which can be fun. And this has actually got a cool version of Spinning Wheel, made famous by Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and a version of Respect, which is, of course, an Otis Redding song made popular by the late, great Aretha Franklin. But this one's got James and whoever his backup singer co-lead was at this point, kind of doing some camaraderie, practicing their shtick, and getting ready to take it on the road. I never got to see James Brown, and it crushes me, because he played literally walking distance for where I was working that day, but I hadn't taken off, and being the kitchen manager at the time, I couldn't just say, hey guys, I'm gonna go take the day off, screw you. So I stayed, I missed it, I have a bootleg of the show, but I will never forgive myself for not just walking out and going to see James Brown. He's kind of somebody that was important. Rest in peace, Godfather. Speaking of funky, you wanna get funky with me? It's Peter Brown. This album is, it was bought for the cover, purely for the cover, because I don't know who this is, but I saw it and I said, well, that looks kind of fun and kind of sexy. The album itself is pretty good, actually. A little cheesy, but 70s kind of disco funkish type feel. Nothing to write home about. You might want to check it out, you might not. You're gonna live either way. Let's move on. I had an ex-girlfriend once upon a time that was obsessed with this next guy, and oddly, she went on to marry somebody that looks just like him. Maybe not just like him, but pretty damn close. Mr. Jackson Browne. I really love Jackson Browne. He has just got a soothing voice, he writes good songs, and he is a decent guitarist, and he surrounds himself with superb musicians. This is his first. Here's his second, For Every Man. Oh, another fun fact about Jackson Browne that you may or may not know. The song that starts out this album, little song called Take It Easy, that would be the song made famous by the Eagles. Well, it turns out Jackson Browne and Glenn Frey co-wrote that song together, so they both released a version of it, whereas one is quite popular, the other one's a little mellower, but they're still standing on that corner in Winslow, Arizona, waiting for something. Will they find it? Who knows? Late for the Sky is his third album, and the title track happens to be one of my personal favorite songs by him. It's just a beautiful song. Then we have The Pretender, another great title track. And seeing as we're on title tracks, his fifth album, probably his most well-known song, also a great title track, Running on Empty. This is a really good album and probably my favorite overall by him, although it's in close contest with Late for the Sky. This one is actually a concept album about being on the road and was recorded all over the place, live, in hotel rooms, even some on the bus, as well as the studio. Songs about being on the road, songs about missing people, songs about not having anybody there and using to use old Rosie to get yourself by, as well as songs about cocaine, and then it ends out with the loadout about everybody packing up to go to the next show and stay, where he just wants to play a tad bit longer. Absolutely great album. Thank you, Jackson Browne, for making this album, because I love it. After that, I had Lawyers in Love, Hold Out, and Lives in the Balance. All of these albums are great. As you get later into the 80s years, the album itself is not as solid and wonderful as his earlier 70s albums, but all of his albums have a really nice acoustic folkish type feel, blended seamlessly with some electric guitars and some really nice, just mellow, well-done vocals with some really great lyrics on top of it. I really dig Jackson Browne, and I'm super stoked that I got to talk to him twice. Once was taking a picture of him for my ex when they got to meet in Hawaii. Then many years later, I met him in LA, and I was talking about her again. So no matter what I do, apparently she is now associated with Jackson Browne, but I guess that's how your brain works, right? Next up, a 9-piece funk rock band from this place, because I didn't look it up prior to this. They're called Brownout, and when I found out about them, they released this album that made my ears perk right up. Brownout presents Brown Sabbath. Oh, fuck. Yeah. So on this one, as well as this one, Brown Sabbath Part 2, a bunch of classic Sabbath stuff done with horns and funkier, and oh my god, it is so good. Some are instrumental, some are vocal, and they are all exceptionally well done versions of Black Sabbath classics. After the Brown Sabbath sessions and whatnot, they released a couple more, this being one of their newer ones, the Berlin sessions, and then they also did their take on Public Enemy. This is Fear of a Brown Planet, all instrumental versions of some classic tracks from the great Public Enemy. More great stuff. Not quite as great as Brown Sabbath, but an equally enjoyable listen. Get into it. After that, I decided to put on my smoking jacket, tap that toe a little lighter, and get into some piano godsend type stuff. You probably know where I'm going with this, but if you don't, Mr. Dave Brubach, or possibly the Dave Brubach Quartet. Dave Brubach, of course, one of the greatest piano-playing composers in the jazz genre, and he is really great stuff. You probably know him from the song Take 5, but anything he did pretty much was really, really great. And I got a bunch of his stuff. So Time in Outer Space, Instant Dave Brubach. My, I can't believe it's not Brubach. Tonight Only with Carmen McRae. This is a little bit of everything. It does some Dave Brubach Quartet, also a couple tracks with Carmen singing. Nice album. Jazz Impressions of the USA featuring Paul Desmond. Brubach plays Cole Porter, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. Time Out featuring Take 5, the song that I mentioned earlier, written by Paul Desmond. Very cool track in a 5/4 time signature that as soon as you hear it, I guarantee you're going to remember it and you cannot escape that groove. Absolutely infectious. In fact, there's a band later on named the Squirrels that did their own version of Take 5 and they mixed it with Hawaiian 5/0. They call it Hawaii Take 5/0, a fun version to look up if you're bored sometime. Jazz Goes to College, which is odd because I just got accepted into a college today, so that's kind of cool. And finally, Gates of Justice. Now, why did I put this one last? Because this one is the one album by Dave Brubach that I'm not into. I bought this in either Argentina or Peru, and I bought it because it's Brubach, and if I ever see Brubach, I buy it because he's just great. This is not a Brubach album. I mean, it is, but this is from a musical. It sounds, there's a lot of vocals on here, and most of it is operatic vocals. 2 male leads, I believe a baritone and a tenor, and it's not unlistenable by any means, but when you're already in a groove, especially when you're listening to like 10 Brubach albums, then you throw this on, and it was in the middle where I was listening to it, but it was very difficult to make that transition into this because it's so operatic, and there are some beautiful tunes on here, but with all the vocals, it's just not something I could really get into, so then some Jack Bruce solo, Things We Like. This album features John McLaughlin and these 2 other cats down there. I bought this because obviously it's Jack Bruce, and I'm thinking, okay, it's gonna be something similar to a Jack Bruce type groove. Kind of like when we were talking about Ginger Baker a little while ago, everything Ginger kind of did kind of had that Cream vibe to it. This, nothing like a Cream vibe. This is straight progressive jazz type stuff. Very avant-garde, very experimental. I mean, it's got John McLaughlin on it, so I mean, that makes sense, right? An interesting album, definitely worth checking out, but not something you can just sit around and groove on a regular basis. It's gonna take a little more time to get into this particular vibe. And that leads me to my last and final of the BRs, Bruford. Bill Bruford, if you don't know him, was the drummer of Yes. He was also the drummer of King Crimson. He sat in with Genesis for a while, and this is exactly what you would expect from him. Progressive rock, really great players, good tunes. Starts out with kind of an electronic type tune, which kind of takes you off guard, but then as soon as the album actually gets into the grit of it, it's basically what you would expect from Bruford. That said, I don't think it has as much of a focus on the drums as one would expect having a solo album by an artist such as Bill Bruford. But it's still a pretty good listen. It certainly has some really great musicians on it like Dave Stewart and Alan Holdsworth. So there we have it. Those are the BRs. I'll be back next time, hopefully a little sooner than this time. Sorry, life kind of gets in the way at times, and we'll get into those BUs and then do all of the Bs that I need to put in that I've bought since I started listening to these. Till then, thanks for watching The Electric Lounge. I appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, share, all those kind of groovy things. As Ricky Rackman once said, keep one foot in the gutter, one fist in the gold, or something like that. I'm out. Peace.